Rashi explains how Yaakov gave very specific instructions who should be carrying his aron, who should be carrying his coffin, taking it from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael. So all of his sons are going to be carrying. However, Levi won't carry it because he is eventually going to be carrying the aron with the luchos. Yosef won't carry it because he's a melech, he's a king. Instead of them should be Menashe and Ephraim. Says the Rebbe, we need to understand. Yosef was specifically the one that was ordered by Yaakov, Unesosanim in Mitzrayim. He should carry out of Mitzrayim. So surely he should be one of the people carrying the aron. And Levi, the question is, what does it have anything to do with the fact that eventually his descendants are going to be carrying the aron with the luchos in a few generations, to the fact that right now he's not being given the opportunity to be able to carry his father's coffin? Says the Rebbe, the explanation is really within Rashi's words himself. Rashi preempts his question by saying that Menashe ve'Ephraim are tachteim, are instead of Levi and Yosef and Levi. In other words, that they are their shluchim, they are their agents, and therefore it's considered as if Levi and Yosef themselves are carrying the aron as well. However, says the Rebbe, we need to understand, we understand why Menashe and Ephraim would replace Yosef. Well, what is their connection to be replacing Levi? In order to understand this, the Rebbe introduces another question. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu carried the bones of Yosef. Now, seemingly, Moshe Rabbeinu is from Shevet Levi. He's actually from the family of Kahas that carries the aron with the luchos. So why is he carrying the bones of Yosef, whereas we said Shevet Levi was not able to carry Yaakov's aron because they're going to be carrying the aron with the luchos? Says the Rebbe, the explanation is, we know that the beginning of trouble for Yidden started after Yaakov Avinu passes away. In other words, Yaakov held back the enslavement, the troubles of Mitzrayim. As long as he was alive, the Yidden had all the good, the fats of the land, all the good of Mitzrayim, etc. And therefore, when they're carrying him out of Mitzrayim, in a certain sense, this is now another stage causing and bringing about the Golus. This will help us understand why Yosef and Levi themselves do not participate in carrying Yaakov out of Mitzrayim. Because a common denominator between Yosef and Levi is that both of them stand higher and above the enslavement of Mitzrayim. In fact, as long as each one of them was alive, it says as long as Yosef was alive, this enslavement didn't start, and then it really started even more so once Levi passed away. In other words, their union, Yosef and Levi, is not to allow Golus Mitzrayim. In fact, regarding Levi, we have something even more. Shevet Levi, even afterwards, were never slaves in Mitzrayim. And therefore, it really wasn't fitting that Yosef and Levi, which are above Golus, should be participating in carrying the coffin of Yaakov, which is, in a certain sense, enabling the Golus. And this is hinted in the reasons what Yaakov says that Levi shouldn't carry it, because he's going to carry the aron, and Yosef shouldn't carry it because he's a melech. How so? Mefarshim explained that the reason that Shevet Levi did not become slaves was because they were the ones carrying the aron with the luchos of the Torah. In other words, carrying the aron does not allow for the slavery. And that's what Yaakov is saying. Levi shouldn't carry. In other words, he shouldn't be part of this bringing about this Golus because he's the one that stands higher than the Golus. He's going to carry the aron. And regarding Yosef, Yosef is a melech. So obviously he's higher than the whole slavery. On the contrary, he's the one that rules over Mitzrayim. Whereas when Moshe Rabbeinu carries the aron of Yosef, we asked, why is he carrying the bones of Yosef? Because they are on the contrary. That's not a matter of Golus, there it's a matter of Geula. In other words, Yosef told his brothers, he made his brothers promise, swear, that Hashem is going to remember you, take you out of Golus, and that's when you should take my bones out. In other words, taking Yosef's bones out is specifically connected to Shevet Levi, to the idea of Geula, and specifically Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that carries it. Moshe Rabbeinu is the redeemer of the Yidden. But, says the Rebbe, now we need to understand, if we understand why Yosef and Levi themselves are not participating in carrying Yaakov out of Mitzrayim, then why are they appointing agents instead of them? Why is Menashe and Ephraim instead of them? In order to understand this, the Rebbe introduces another question. We know Hashem by the Bris Bein Absarim told Avraham Avinu that the Yidden are going to be slaves in a land that's not theirs, there's going to be slavery, etc., and then they will leave Berchush Gadol with great wealth. And the question is, this was a decree for all the Yidden. How is this being fulfilled in Shevet Levi if they are not the slaves, and therefore, seemingly, they didn't have neither the slavery, and they also shouldn't have the Ruchush Gadol afterwards? Says the Rebbe, the explanation is the fact that they weren't involved in the work doesn't mean they had no connection at all to Golus Mitzrayim. Rather, this itself, the fact that they weren't working, was all part of what was needed to happen in slavery and Golus Mitzrayim. Why? Because the point of being in Mitzrayim was not chas v'shalom to torture Yidden. It was all for the great aliyah, for the great elevation and refinement that would come as a result of that. The problem, however, is, as a result of the difficulty of the Golus, sometimes it can happen in a situation that the Yidden could forget what they're there for and what the point is, and they can start getting all completely sunk in to the lowliness of Mitzrayim. And therefore, this is the job of Shevet Levi. They are there with the Yidden in Golus, but they're the guides of the Yidden, teaching the Yidden, reminding the Yidden that Golus is not their real place, and the ultimate of all of this is to come out of it in a greater and better way. And that's why you always need to have within the Golus, there was those Yidden that were actually working, but there is that category of Yidden that remain above the slavery. And they're influencing the Yidden to fulfill their kavanah and ultimately be able to come out with that great wealth. And that was exactly the job of Shevet Levi. And therefore we say that all of the Yidden were part of Shibud Mitzrayim, but in different ways. They were partners, both of part of the same thing. In other words, there's those Yidden working b'poil mamish, and there's Shevet Levi ensuring that the Yidden don't get stuck into it and sunk into it. Similarly, actually, is also when the Yidden come into Eretz Yisrael, Shevet Levi are there always the ones to be guiding the Yidden, teaching the Yidden. They do the avoid in the Beis HaMikdash on behalf of the Yidden. They carry the Aroin. This is all part of it. They're doing the b'shlichus of all of the Yidden. So they're doing these things on behalf of the Yidden, and the Yidden are involved practically in the world of making the world a dira for the Eibishter, elevating it to being involved in the world, and being able to bring it close to Hashem. And therefore, we could say now that by the Shevet Levi as well had the Va'avodim, they too were part of the slavery, and therefore they too could have the Ruchush Gadol. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand why, although Yosef and Levi themselves don't carry the Aroin, but they needed Menashe and Ephraim to be instead of them. That is, that even though on their own they're higher than Golus, and that's why they don't carry and they don't get involved in it, but they need to be giving the koyach, they need to be giving the strength from a place that's higher than slavery to the rest of the Shvatim to be able to do their avodah. And they do that through their shluchim that are going to participate in the carrying the Aroin of Yaakov. In other words, Menashe and Ephraim are in a certain sense going to be the continuation, bringing down the ideas of Yosef and Levi to the rest of the Yidden. So first, in order to understand this, let's first understand the difference between Yosef and Levi. Yosef himself, he really represents what Yaakov was all about. It says, Ela Tolis Yaakov Yosef. Yosef brings about all the inyanim of Yaakov. Yosef himself is completely higher than Golus, does not allow the Golus to be at all. He's the ruler over Mitzrayim. Levi, on the other hand, and Shevet Levi, represents those that are in Golus, and nevertheless, in other words, he doesn't rule over the Golus, he doesn't have the power to not allow the Golus, but he doesn't get involved in it, he doesn't get absorbed in it, he doesn't sink into it. On the contrary, Shevet Levi are the ones that give the Yidden the koyach to be able to take and elevate and transform the Golus in a way of Yisro, or getting the light out of the darkness. And ultimately, Moshe and Aaron come from Shevet Levi, who are the ones that bring about the Geula for Bnei Yisrael. And that's the job of Shevet Levi. From this we have the two different avodas of Menashe and Ephraim. What is the difference between Menashe and Ephraim? So we look at their names. This is explained in other sichos of the Rebbe as well. Menashe was so called, Ki nashani Elokim, Hashem made me forget my father's house. That's what Yosef said. And what's the idea? He wants to make sure that he doesn't forget. So he's the whole time remembering that I'm in a place of Mitzrayim that's trying to make me forget my father's house, and I'm going to make sure never ever to forget. So that's what Menashe represents. It's similar to Yosef, which stays higher than Golus Mitzrayim. Menashe is saying, I want to remain completely above the Golus the whole time. Ephraim, on the other hand, was so called, Ki Yifrani Elikim Be'eretz Anya. Yosef said, Hashem made me multiply in my land of affliction. In other words, within the suffering, I'm going to transform it to become greater and better. Yisra, or the greater light out of the darkness. And this is more related, like, to the idea of Shevet Levi, which was all about trying to transform the darkness of the Golus itself. And that's why Menashe and Ephraim, Menashe representing Yosef's avodah, and Ephraim representing Levi's avodah. Says the Rebbe, really, these two avodas are shaykh right now to each and every Yid as well. First, a Yid has to be in Golus, he has to be similar to Yosef, like a melech, standing himself higher than the Golus, not to be nispoil, not to be affected by any of the challenges, by any of the tests. That's number one. But then to act like Levi, who carries the Aron, which is the Torah. To take the Torah, to be able to transform the darkness into light, which will of course be in the most revealed way when Mashiach comes immediately, when the night itself will shine like the day, b'meheira v'yameinu mamash.